forget all you know about podcasts. We welcome you to an experience uniquely different. Please join us for our coverage of all entertainment on the fringe of society. The candles are lit, the lights are down low. It is now time to welcome our host as he steps up to the pulpit. The sacrifice has been prepared for the midnight black mass.
Ghastly greetings, all of my groovy ghoulies out there in podcast land. Welcome to another edition of the Midnight Black Mass. This is your host, the maniacal minister of the occult, the devil you know, the dragon, the Reverend Dan Wilson. And welcome again to another episode of the program. Last week our guest was the butcher Bobby Hayes. He introduced us to a good portion of his wrestling career. And we'll be back next week with Bobby on our part 2 of that interview. He's one of the most feared and simultaneously respected individuals in all of Southern wrestling. May not be a name you're familiar with. If you're not, I urge you to go on YouTube and look up some Bobby Hayes and see exactly just how good this guy is and has been since 1991. He was a pro. So is one of the veterans that I learned a whole lot from in my early days in the business, and many, many others did as well. So definitely want to check out the Bobby Hayes archive and look forward to having him on the show next week. It's been a busy couple of weeks since my return to the ring. I've been back at Empire Wrestling. We had a live Midnight Black Mass with the crazy incident I talked about last week with Ace Rockwell, and he's recovering okay. His son was just born. Sawyer Ace was born healthy. I know he's happy about that. Probably not real happy about not being able to get a good look at his own kids. So we're going to find out a little more about that as this situation progresses. I'll be back at Empire Wrestling on March the 21st. That's this Saturday night. The last stop before Tooth and Nail 4. We'll have another live Midnight Black Mass on tap. Our guest will be the main event of Tooth and Nail 4, the Empire Heavyweight Champion, the Temptation, Sean Tempers, as well as the challenger, Logan Alvey, and the Empire Matchmaker, the 2014 Georgia Wrestling History Booker of the Year, Andrew Alexander. All three going to be on the live Midnight Black Mass talking about Tooth and Nail 4's main event, as well as the situation with Ace Rockwell and a whole lot more. You definitely want to be there. Big card on tap. We've got the Double Dragons taking on the Empire Tag Team Champions, the Wild Stallions, as their best of 5 series rolls on towards Tooth and Nail 4. We've got Tank, the Strong Style Psycho, my longtime client who, while I'm not managing technically at Empire, I still am a great supporter, and he still will always be a client of mine. I'm just not currently managing anyone at Empire. I'm part of the broadcast team. You can catch me doing the play-by-play on Tooth and Nail 4, which will take place on April the 4th. That's just coming up in 2 weeks. April the 4th, Tooth and Nail 4, the biggest event of the year in the Southern Independent Wrestling, quite possibly. I mean, you really, it's hard to say that when you have Anarchy's Hardcore Hell. I'll be quite honest, because Hardcore Hell has a history going back to 1997, and I've been fortunate to be a part of double-digit numbers of those events and hope to be a part of them again soon. I won't be making it down for Hardcore Hell this year, it doesn't look like, but I wish all of my crew and family down there at the NWA Arena, the Anarchy Arena now as it's known, for Anarchy Wrestling, of course, the former stomping grounds of NWA Wildside, which we'll be talking a lot about with our guest tonight. Mr. Caprice Ice Coleman of Ring of Honor Wrestling fame is coming up. We're going to talk a little bit more later to the show-stopping crowd popper, one of my all-time favorite Wildside talents to call the matches of. We had a lot of great times, and we're going to talk about all those and what he's doing now. So that's coming up later on the show. As far as Empire Wrestling goes, check them out on social media. You can catch them on Facebook at facebook.com/Empire Wrestling. Follow them on Twitter at EmpirePW, or go to their website at EmpireWrestling.net. They've got a host of video on demand content on the website. That's where I've returned to the play-by-play booth. And I will be doing that again, of course, as I mentioned, for Tooth and Nail 4, but also the Long Cold Winter 2015 DVD is primed for release. I've just talked to the Empire production team. They're getting that wrapped up and having our first, we've had various technical difficulties and other hindrances on these previous releases that we've really hoped to get out. So this is going to be the first major DVD release from Empire, and I'm really excited to be a part of it, as always. It's a different perspective after going for years worried about what's going on at ringside and my talent and wins and losses and travel arrangements and booking fees. It's kind of refreshing, actually, to just go back to what I started doing in the wrestling industry. Just in the announce booth, just taking off the paint and just stripping it back to the bare bones. And because that's something I love doing. It's a skill set that I possess, and it's a pencil that I like to keep sharp. So I love getting the opportunity to do that for Empire Wrestling. Briefly on the spooky news this week. Spooky news. We get a lot of our spooky news from dreadcentral.com with a little section they like to call the Gasp Menagerie. And this week on the Gasp Menagerie, they featured what was a video of an alleged exorcism filmed through a keyhole in a church. And you got to see it to believe it. It's pretty disturbing. The video quality is not great, but the sounds coming out of there are pretty horrifying. Just makes you wonder, what is the case with exorcism? It's a phenomenon that's been around for many years. Is it indeed demonic or otherworldly possession of a human body? Or is it a mental illness? The great subject of debate for thousands of years. And even in today, in the modern world of science, there are certain things within that community, allegedly, that cannot be explained. So, like I said, it's always a good idea to keep an open mind and take the evidence for what it is. But certainly you can make your own decision if you go over to dreadcentral.com. This week on the Revs Rant. This week, I'm ranting on a hot topic in the business. One Devon Dudley recently put out an open letter regarding trainers and the lack of respect of young talent in the business. That's something I've lamented on several times here on the show. First of all, to get that out of the way, Devon Dudley is a great guy. I've met him a couple times. I know he's dear friends with close friend of mine, Stephen Prazak. He was nothing but kind to me in the interactions we've had. So he seems like a great dude. So what I just want to put out here this week in the rant is that I agree with part of what he's saying, and there's another part that I respectfully disagree with, and I'm going to explain that to you right now. Now, perhaps it's because I'm just some indie guy, right, who never made it to the dance, never got that big contract, so perhaps I speak from a point of sour grapes. I don't think I do. But I always like to preface anything I address of this level with that, because I think that's important to know that a lot of people that bitch and moan about the wrestling business are just pissed off that they're not the ones in the spot. So that's not me, but I want to get that out there at least right ahead of the game. But I do agree with him. The part I agree with, there is a distinct lack of respect for veterans in the overall history of the sport within the ranks of our youngest and most inexperienced competitors. Furthermore, he is exactly correct to come to the conclusion that as a result of poor training, in most cases done by individuals who have no business whatsoever training people to wrestle, the indies are full of people with this bad attitude, especially in 2015. And we agree so far. We're on the same page. He then went on to say that essentially, if you didn't have some kind of experience in WWE or TNA, you therefore had never made it and therefore did not have any pedigree to be training anyone. And that's where we kind of start to disagree a little bit. Now, it's just, I wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. Like I said before, it may be sour grapes on my behalf, but you have to, it's just, I can't even hardly wrap my head around that. And to me, it's just a sign of the conditioning of the industry and in what a polarized state that we're in now. But like I say, I wholeheartedly disagree with the statement that you have to have had made it in WWE or TNA to be a qualified professional wrestling trainer. It's just too broad of a statement, and I can pick it full of holes. First, I can name numerous guys who had lengthy runs in either company who were trained by guys who never made it, and they did just fine. So you're saying by proxy, they're qualified to teach because they made it, even though they were qualified. They were trained by guys who didn't make it. Doesn't make sense. I mean, there's some points to be argued against that for sure, but still, it's definitely wavy logic. WWE, they employ people like Adam Pearce and Sarah Del Rey and Robbie Brookside. They all work in NXT in the talent development area, and they help young talent, and they are people who have never made it, quote unquote, in TNA or WWE. But all of those people had great wrestling careers. They even traveled the world. Robbie Brookside is legendary, especially in the UK. The Dudleys, they were trained by Johnny Rodz. So now he was a guy. Yeah, he was a WWE Hall of Famer. Sure, he was an amazing worker. He was highly respected. He was pushed in many territories, but WWE wasn't one of them. He was an enhancement talent there 90% of his career, but still a great talent and a great trainer. My bottom line, the point is that I'm trying to make here, it is not your stature in the industry that qualifies you to teach the next generation, but your understanding of how the industry works from an inside level. Those lessons can come from many, often unexpected places in both success and failure. There are certain people, I'd say mostly the special attraction types, like people that had runs in both major companies, actually. They were probably just people that were trying to make a quick buck. Those people wouldn't be qualified to teach someone how to make it through an interview without looking like a hollow-eyed Ken doll or a Stepford wife waiting for their puppeteer to tell them it's okay to fart. And I don't, nor do I ever plan on training anybody. I mentor some managers and announcers currently in the business when they come to me for help, but that's about it. The point I'm trying to make, especially in 2015, there's no territory system. There's only about 100 spots to make any real money. The be all and end all of judgment in quality pro wrestling is not necessarily by who made it in TNA or WWE, in my opinion. There are a lot of talented, hardworking people on the independent scene still trying to scrape and claw to get by and earn that little bit of respect. Many who deserved a bigger opportunity, but either because they made bad decisions, didn't kiss the right ass, kissed the wrong ass, or simply weren't in the right place at the right time, their opportunity never came. I get increasingly frustrated with the business writing off so many who excelled in every opportunity they were given, but just never got the opportunity. Yes, the indies are the wild west of professional wrestling, as I've stated many times here. There is a giant shit heap of garbage whose stench permeates the landscape, but amidst the piles of rubble and trash, there are plenty of diamonds who would shine just as brightly if someone took the time to dig for them. So that's my point. The indies is often overlooked, is often disrespected, is often laughed at and cast aside, and in many, many cases, rightfully so, by those who have had a taste of that holy grail in professional wrestling. But I remind you of a great phrase Mr. Ricky Morton once said: you better be careful of the toes you step on the way up, because they might somewhere be connected to the asses you're going to have to kiss on the way back down. I was watching the WWE Hall of Fame the other night, one of the old episodes on the WWE Network. They had the Four Horsemen induction. I was watching that and listening to Arn Anderson's speech, and he had a great comment about we're all intertwined, talking to the audience, talking to the young guys in the crowd, in my opinion, speaking to the independent wrestlers and basically the wrestling industry on every level, every asset, every different side of it, that we're all intertwined and connected. And so the shit and the garbage needs to be called out for being so, and it needs to be addressed. But in doing that, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and realize that there's a lot of guys who did learn the right way, who do things the right way, who may just have never gotten that right opportunity. So that doesn't necessarily disqualify them from being able to train in professional wrestling. So that's all I got this week for the Revs Rant. Thanks for indulging me there. Like I said, no disrespect to Mr. Devon Dudley. I just respectfully disagree with his stance on that. But like I said, he's a guy that otherwise I agreed with in the rant. I mean, I do think that there's a distinct lack of respect, and we address that. So we'll be right back after this commercial break. Ring of Honor Wrestling star on the Sinclair Broadcast Network. You can catch him weekly. Caprice Ice Coleman is coming up right after these words from our sponsor.
Whether you're having an autograph session, personal appearance, or live event, we got just the person you need to contact for all of those needs. SBI Bookings is home of some of the best stars in the wrestling industry today. They provide you with the best talent this business has to offer, from Kevin Nash, Larry Zbyszko, Scott Steiner, and many, many more. So who will you contact next time you're planning an event? The men of SBI Bookings. Check them out at sbibookings.com.
The Midnight Black Mass is pleased to announce we have become an affiliate of the World Wrestling Network at wwnlive.com, the home of the finest iPay-per-view and video on demand in all of professional wrestling, featuring promotions like Dragon Gate USA, Evolve, Combat Zone Wrestling, OVW, Shimmer, Shine, $5 Wrestling, and the vaunted Kayfabe commentaries with their U-Shoot, their guest booker, and their timeline series. You have to check it out. Of course, you can always go to their main page at wwnlive.com, but if you will, do us a solid, go to facebook.com/pottyhumor or follow me on Twitter at Dragons Rejects. We'll be posting our own unique links to these events as affiliates. If you go through our link, they give us a little kickback, and we greatly appreciate it.
Wrestling fans, Anarchy Wrestling television tapings are the second and fourth Saturdays of every month at 4236 Level Grove Road in Cornelia, Georgia. For more information on Anarchy Wrestling and on the shows, to watch the television product, and a whole lot more, go to anarchy-wrestling.net. That's Anarchy Wrestling, the second and fourth Saturdays of every month in Cornelia, Georgia.
Where can you find 24/7 pro wrestling, MMA, talk radio, and more? BeyondRingside.com, featuring 24/7 streaming audio, including the Midnight Black Mass, Sundays at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, except for pay-per-view weekends when they run a mini marathon and the Midnight Black Mass goes on as its namesake at midnight. But don't forget the other great shows like Beyond Ringside, Wrestle Rage, To Be Determined, and more. That's BeyondRingside.com.
Blog Talk Radio.
And we're back on this week's edition of the Midnight Black Mass. My guest at this time is an old friend from the Wildside days. Back when I knew him well, he was the show-stopping, crowd-popping, body-rocking, pulse-pounding, heart racer, the handsome-face heartbreaker, and I can't remember the rest of it, but I'm sure he could go on all night. It is my pleasure to welcome Caprice Ice Coleman to the show. How you doing, man?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. I thought I was going to hear the whole catchphrase. I was getting excited over here.
I got very close. I don't know exactly what I left out, but that was always one of my favorite things.
Crowd popping, body rocking, pulse pounding, heart racer, the handsome face heartbreaker, the man with the style, the grace, the shape, and the face, the innovator, crowd motivator, commentator, complicator, more complicated, more devastating than a space modulator. Plus, he got ties with the creator.
Oh, man, that brings back some good old memories, and we certainly had a good time in those days. We're going to get to all of that. The first question I like to ask my guests on the show is not, we'll always talk about how you got into the business because that's going to come up. But my question is always, what ignited the fire in you, whether it was you're a kid or you're a teenager, but the first time that you saw wrestling and truly fell in love with it, what was it that appealed to you and when?
It was the Devil in the Boot, and I was 3 years old. Dusty Rhodes, Barry Windham feud. It was talking about the Devil in the Boot, man, and I never forgot it, man. It was probably before your time. But Dusty Rhodes had the cowboy boots on, and it was talking about the Devil in the Boot, and I had to figure out what was going on with that, man, and I was hooked ever since. It was old NWA days. probably 1981 or 1980.
It's a little bit before my time, but not much. I was
Just
born in
born.
'80, so I grew up on that NWA stuff. But you were right there in the thick of it there, growing up in the Carolinas. Am I right?
Absolutely. That's all we knew about, man. I didn't know anything about WWE until I was in maybe 6th grade, and I heard about what WWE was or whatever. It might have been 4th grade, 4th or 6th grade when I heard about Hulk Hogan and all of that. And we didn't know anything about that.
Well, those guys were just celebrities in that region at that time. I mean, they were celebrities all over the country, but in the Carolinas, it was like Elvis or the Beatles compared to the Rock and Roll Express.
Nobody was like, hey, I'm going to watch wrestling tonight. It was like, oh, man, I'm going to watch Ric Flair tonight. You know, they just named it by the names, and it wasn't like, I'm going to watch the NWA or whatever like that. So I'm going to see what Ric Flair doing tonight. You know, so it was like the Ric Flair show.
And it was a different show every night, and you can tell that's where you got a lot of your interview influence, I'm sure. But, you know, I can pick out various influences in there. I can pick out Dusty Rhodes. I can pick out a little Muhammad Ali. What all went into crafting that style?
For me, man, I call it moments of influence, man. It was just in my life, man, that I admired, you know, and Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee were people that were introduced to me by my stepdad. Of course, you know, he passed a couple of months ago, and I was always a big wrestling fan, but he was a big martial art and sports fan, you know, and I would tell him about, you know, Ric Flair and the Rock and Roll Express and Brian Pillman and the Road Warriors and all that. And he's like, man, let me tell you about Bruce Lee. Let me tell you about Muhammad Ali, you know, and that was our thing there. And I became a big fan of both of those people. And, of course, Dusty Rhodes was the first wrestler I actually kind of laid eyes on, so that always stuck with me. And Ric Flair just always grabbed my attention, man. It's all went from there, man. It's a whole lot of people in there, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once I saw myself, you know, I think finding yourself and intertwining a little bit of this and that, you know, makes it unique, you know.
You've definitely done that. You managed to take all those influences, and that's what a good interview does, is takes all the various influences that they have, puts their own spin on them, and makes them their own, and you've done that. And you were a throwback in that respect in the interview department, because I know you're not a big scripter. I remember in the announcing days when you would always come out, you'd have some kind of gag. You'd put comically large sunglasses on me, or you were always having fun and ad-libbing. And how important do you think that is in terms of your overall presentation?
Man, I think improv and just thinking on the whim and being witty is the goodness, man. I mean, the script is going to be there, you know. People always have this to go by and had to go by, but, you know, I believe a true artist is one that's able to go out there, man, and shoot from the hip, man, and feel the crowd and feel the vibe and go with what's going on, instead of always going by, you know, what's supposed to happen, because nothing that's supposed to happen will happen perfectly, you know what I mean? But you can ride a vibe, and you can always ride a perfect wave.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wise words there, and something I think some of the younger talent could really take to heart. You were like one of the last great promos I think I saw come across the pike in the Indies. I mean, there's a lot of really good ones, but you know, there's a certain level and a certain magic, and you always captivated that audience in Cornelia, and now Ring of Honor, and wherever else you've went, and that's a big key to that, I think.
I appreciate that, man.
Oh, my pleasure, man. So a lot of people may not know this. A lot of people do. You did break in through the Hardy Boys, and they actually, Matt and Jeff Hardy talked about it in the WWE autobiography. They mentioned you and Wildside specifically, and now that we're to that part, why don't you take us into that experience a little bit, and just kind of what it was like meeting those guys and learning from them, and what you did. What were the most important things you took from that experience?
Well, I guess you got to realize that when I met them, they weren't quote unquote the Hardy Boys, you know.
Right.
I was I was always into wrestling and all, and I wrestled all the way through high school, and I was at a video store, and this guy was handing out local, wrestling posters, and I was asking him about it. I told him, I was like, hey, man, I wrestled in high school. I'm really interested in, wrestling. Is there any way that, that I can get into it or whatever? And you got to remember, about when I'm asking him this, I weigh every bit of 120 pounds, 135 pounds maybe. And he wasn't mad or Jeff, but he just kind of looked at me and laughed. He was like, sure, he told me where they meet at, and all. And I came there and I met him, and it was just like, Matt, Jeff, Jason Art with Joey Ads, Shannon Moore, and Sharon Payne were the guys in Tracy. His son is Trevor Lee. But he was wrestling as T.C. Brimstone, Tracy Cadell at the time. It was at his house, and they were just like guys that were, kind of training themselves, but they've been trained by like Italian Stallion or whatever, but the Italian Stallion kind of took it for a run, if you know what I mean. And he had a loan. But and so they were kind of like, training themselves and then going as we went, and they didn't have they had a small person at the time, which was Shannon Moore. He was going as Kid Dynamo at the time, and they said they needed a referee, and I told them, well, I referee for free if they teach me how to wrestle. And it went on from there, man, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger, man. I remember, like, when I first started with them, it was called, like, East Coast Wrestling Association or whatever. We were just doing, like, the fair once a year type thing, and then Matt got a deal with the Armory, and it went from there to the New Frontier Wrestling Alliance, and then it went from New Frontier Wrestling Alliance to Matt having a dream one day about Omega, and it was basically the organization of modern extreme grappling arts, and, like, once he latched hold of that, man, everything is, I believed at one time, I was thinking, oh, man, this was the WWE for me, you know what I mean? We were traveling, we were going places and all, and we had our own group, and it was like 10 or 15 of us, and we were selling out high schools and all kind of things, man. So that was it for me, and then Matt and Jeff got signed, and we were there. We were all happy for them, and Thomas Simpson and all, we were all part of that, and it was kind of like a dream come true for them, But the good thing is they never really forgot about everybody, I believe Shannon Moore and Shane Helms and Joey Matthews and Christian York ended up coming down the Wildside, and they wanted to bring me, and they kept trying to bring me there, but I had a severe ankle injury right the week I was supposed to be coming, and it kept me from going with them. And I was on the shelf for a little while or whatever, and then when the time came back around, that's when I brought a guy named Laz with me up there to Wildside, and I went from there.
And that's a great segue into the Wildside years, because we focus heavily on that. I've kind of been trying to chronicle the history of that. It was a real special time in the business. There's a lot of guys that went on to great things. Were just kind of getting wet behind the ears and learning things, but you saw those initial sparks of greatness and a lot of talent. And so we do a little segment here called the Wildside Chronicles, where we talk about the history of Wildside. So we'll delve into that a little bit. You came into the company. It was probably some of your earliest experience working in a television environment. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did a little bit here and there with other local promotions that people were, was going to start up, and they thought was going to happen. They would all, fall through type deal. So, and mostly it was me being a referee. So this was the first time me being like a wrestler on TV for the TV promotion.
And there's a unique way of learning that you learn on television that you just don't get anywhere else, in terms of timing, in terms of where to be, working the cameras. It's all a whole new experience. How do you think that prepared you for your later steps in your career?
Man, I don't believe I ever realized the atmosphere that I was in, because me and you both know Wildside. It looks a lot bigger on TV than it is in real life, But you had the camera, you had the hard camera, you had the side camera, you had the audience, you had the interviews, you had the commentators, you had everything there. It was just in a smaller venue. And so it was almost like being trained but not realize you were being trained, because you was there. It was every other week. It was consistent. And you just learned how to do it, You just kind of went with the flow. And I owe so much to those times, because I was able to find me, because that was actually the first time I went somewhere and I wasn't the only athletic guy there. Everywhere else I went, I was the one doing, backflips and there, and I was awing and just wowing everybody with a moonsault, or whatever. And then I get there and there's AJ Styles and JC Daz and all these guys that are just doing the same thing I can do, and I'm like, what? Hold on a second now. I'm the athletic guy, and it forced me to find something else, because I realized that, okay, this is not a place where I'm going to be able to get over by just being athletic. They had Jason Cross and, oh man, I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch of guys, but it's the ones that's sticking out to me at the moment. And it was just like, I had to find something else to draw the attention to me, and I remember getting a microphone one time, and of course I'm a minister, and I was just talking, and once I started talking, of course it became natural, and once I started seeing the crowd respond to it, and noticing that I started getting the microphone more and more, I realized, okay, this is my thing. I'm not going to be able to get over as much with the cool moves that I have, but if I talk about the cool moves that I have and I talk myself up, I can make people believe that the little stuff that I'm doing is cooler than what everybody else is doing, with the power of the microphone, and that's what I would do, man. I make myself, and that's where that catchphrase came from. I was like, man, if I could just make people think this when I come out, man, they'll believe it, And so when they saw me, they were seeing all of this, and nothing else was being there. If they remember anything else, they remember that catchphrase and bits and pieces of it. And there was people in the audience that would memorize that catchphrase, man, and they would believe it. When I was coming out, I was the show stopping, crowd popping. I was it. And it worked. So that's what I ran with, man. Everybody else was, was on, the typical promos and the whoa, 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 and all that. I was like, nah, I gotta do something different, and being able to have a place to learn and to succeed and fail, and succeed and fail until you succeed. I owe so much to that place.
And a lot of that, of course, attributed to the knowledge and experience and the guidance of one Bill Behrens, who has been the guy holding down the fort down here for years. What about Bill and his influence on your career?
He's like the father of so many wrestlers in the business, man, because he was the one guy that, honestly, I was at a point to where, everywhere I went, everything was great. You get used to everybody, oh, man, that was awesome. Oh, that was great. Oh, that was fantastic. Oh, that was great. He was the one guy that would bring you to the side and be like, yeah, it wasn't that great. You know what I mean? And I'm like, hold on a second now. We talking about the same guy. I was out there a minute ago. You see that? Did you see that? And he would bring me aside and tell me, well, you could have did this and this and that and that. And if you didn't do as much of this and this, and I was like, wow. And it wasn't just, because I had the ones that were like, well, you do too many moves, or you're not big enough, or you're not this enough, or you're not that enough, or whatever. And they would never tell me how to get better. But Bill Behrens would tell me, and ways to get better. And then the whole crew there, we were all there to make each other better. You know what I mean? But Bill Behrens was one that would, say, hey, what about this and what about that, and try this the next time, and not so much of this and not so much of that, And I think that's what helped prune me into finding myself in that era, because there was somebody there that wasn't just going to say that wasn't great, but was there to say, okay, this is how I would, you know what I mean? Or what do you think about that? And not just his opinion, but he would give you options, you know what I mean, to work on and try to figure it out yourself, you know what I mean? And that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, choices. He would give you choices, and you're not the first person to say that. I know Hernandez from TNA fame has been on record as saying Bill was the first person to tell him he sucked.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys need to hear that.
Even today, man. I mean, even today, I need that sometimes, because we're in a business that's constantly changing. And you have to be able to change with the business, or you get left behind. And I have people I can talk to that's like, hey, what if you do this, or what if you do that, or whatever. And you have to be humble enough to be able to take what they say with a grain of salt, And I've always tried to have one of those in my back pocket.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the opponents that you had in Wildside, and just maybe what you might have picked up from the various people that you had long-term dealings with. I know you said you came into the company with Laz. For the fans that don't know Laz, let me explain his gimmick. This is a male who came out to Britney Spears. He had a very flamboyant face paint on, and he did a lot of dancing and grinding. But when the bell rang, he was actually a pretty good wrestler. What was it like working with Laz?
At the beginning, it was very intimidating, because here's a guy that I brought up because told, hey, man, we're giving you another chance here. You're all healed up. I heard you can go now. Your ankle's healed. Just bring a guy you can wrestle, and, we'll start you from there to have a good match with. And so I was like, okay, so I'm on the indie scenes, and Laz was big at a place I went to. I was like, look, man, I'm trying to go to this place. I need to have a good match, but can you come with me? He's like, cool, yeah, of course. And I brought him there, and I think I brought somebody else there as well. But me and Laz had the match. And it was supposed to be my show, and he goes out there, and the Britney Spears music plays, and he just steals the show. And I mean, I was like, what just happened? Because this was Caprice Coleman's, debut. You know what I mean? And he went out there and just, oops, I did it again. And I mean, the whole thing. And I've seen him do it, but I believe the crowd that he was doing it in front of when I wrestled him was so used to it that it wasn't as big. So when he did it in front of the Wildside crowd, and they never seen it before, it was like, the biggest thing ever, because everybody else was used to being so serious, so mean, so big, and so bad, and here comes this guy that just put everything aside and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to be funny, and I'm going to be entertaining, and I'm going to be good at it, and that was him, man. And that even made me work harder on my craft. I think that's when I ended up turning heel or something, and at the beginning I came in as a baby, and it was cool. But I believe the first time I actually got in the mic was when I turned heel against him, and that's what started Caprice Coleman.
And from there, you were off to the races. You had a couple runs with the Junior Heavyweight Championship. You had a big feud with Jimmy Rave that I remember was a lot of fun, where it culminated in the ladder match, and the deal was that you were afraid of heights, so you brought out the miniature ladder.
Of course. I was trying to be different, man, because, I mean, in that aspect, I was like, man, there's no way in the world I'm going to have a better ladder match than, Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels and all this. I said, but I can be creative. And that was just me trying to be creative, man, finding something to be creative about to make the fans, give them the storyline or whatever. So we don't have to go out there and kill each other. You know what I mean? We can go out there and have a good match, and then they remember, oh, that's why he's in the height. But then when I think about it, it's like he's a high flyer, though, instead of height. But it worked. You know, and working with Jimmy Rave, man, was another person that, you know, you didn't know who you was in the ring with. You know what I mean? And it was just, for me, working with Jimmy Rave, it was just somebody that clicked. You know, it was just, man, this guy was good. We clicked. We always had good matches. He knew his role. I knew my role. You know, most of the time when we wrestled, I was the heel, he was the baby. And I was just, you know, beat the crap out of him, and then he come out of nowhere with all of this, you know, energy and all of this and never die attitude. And the crowd got it, and we knew what to do, you know. And it was an easy field to have because we both knew our roles, you know.
Yeah, you absolutely did. That launched you both.
Yeah. And he went on to greatness, man. He's good people, man, good people.
Yeah, Jimmy's one of the old school guys, man. There's a bond that crew of guys just shares still to this day. I've compared it, and not literally, but it's like going to war. Not in that you're actually going to war, and not in any ways that horrific, but it's a unique experience that only you guys shared, you know.
Absolutely, man. Anybody that I was in Wildside with, you know, when I see them now, sometimes they come like AJ Styles is at Ring of Honor now, and we always end up in the same locker room. You know, when Jimmy Ray was there, we would always end up in the same locker room. You know, it's just like family. You know what I mean? We don't say, hey, what locker room you gonna be in? We just kind of migrate to each other because it's that, you know, that camaraderie, that familiarity. You know, and AJ's been around the world, man. He knows a lot of people, man. But me and him just have that bond. You know, and he always finds a way to, you know. Oh man, I did all that daggone talking. I looked and the daggone phone was on hold. How long? When did I cut off?
You had just started talking about how AJ had been around the world, and that you know, he was always humble, and you know, he never forgot where he came from, kind of deal.
Oh well, he would make out. He would pick at me even at Ring of Honor. You know, he when Jimmy Ray and AJ Styles would come to Ring of Honor. Even now, you know, we always end up in the same room. You know. Because of that family. Did I say that already?
Yes, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's like that family camaraderie type deal. And AJ picks at me because he's like, you know, Caprice Coleman, you never age. He's like, everybody getting old but you. You know, he's like, what are you doing? Are you a vampire? What's going on here? But we had a show in Atlanta not too long ago that Bill Behrens came down to, and there was so many of the Wildside guys, Sal Renara, and so many of the guys from Wildside came there, and it was just there, man. It was like a big old reunion, and it just felt good, man. It was like being home again. And when I came out from behind the curtain with the Atlanta crowd, you know, a lot of them there like knew who I was and remembered me from Wildside, and I mean, it just felt good, you know. It was a good memory.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's exactly the way I feel. You know, when I get together with those guys, it's old home week. It is family through and through. One of the other opponents I do want to talk about before we move on to other things, just because, in my opinion, watching you in the booth as a commentator and watch you grow as a performer over the years, I think one feud in particular in the Wildside days really just completely changed the way that you approached everything. And I think a lot of it had to do that you were working through an injury, but you were paired up, had the good fortune to be paired up with a great veteran trained by the Malenkos, had experience in WCW and ECW, Tony Mamaluke. And you guys had a series of matches that was just unbelievable. What was it like working with Tony, and what did you learn from him?
Oh, man, it was an honor working with him because, to me, he was a star. You know, he came in to Wildside as a star, and I was like, man, y'all putting this guy with me. And I just wanted to learn from him, you know. And we would talk and all, and I was just like, man, I just want to learn. You just tell me what I need to do. And I was coming off an injury, and he knew that. And he was the first person to teach me how you could still have a great match, and you don't have to kill yourself, and you could be hurt and still wrestle, basically. and he showed me ways to get around your injury until you heal. I had a problem of like always hurting myself even more, and he just showed me how to basically how to protect myself in the ring when I'm hurt. And we had great matches, but I believe most of it because he showed me how to slow down, and tell a story and grab a hold and, facial expressions and, use the charisma at certain times and, making things mean something and letting things die down before you build them back up. Stuff like that, man, that, you're just not going to learn balls to the walls the whole time,
He really was. He was a great teacher to many talents in the Wildside locker room. But like I said, I think you just after that it was like a whole different Caprice Coleman. You came out of that with a confidence, and certainly it wasn't just right away to the top, but you continued working hard, and that's where you really started branching out. You really had your earliest appearances in Ring of Honor in like 2004. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it was. Yeah, go ahead, man.
I remember the first phone call that Bill Barons called me and told me about it, and I was excited, man, because I had heard of Ring of Honor, basically because of AJ, but it was the first time that, somebody called and I wasn't trying to get there. They were calling me for me to come there, and that was like mind blowing to me because, they were interested in me, man, and that was a big deal for me, a really big deal. I was honored that a company saw me and saw something in me, so yeah, I believe if I could have stayed healthy and had I guess the right mindset, then maybe things would have been different. But in the scheme of things, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, and that wasn't the only branching out you were doing at the time. You actually were involved with some of the early TNA tapings there in Nashville, and I'm sure that was a whole other experience altogether.
Yeah, and that was basically when TNA was really starting up. It was still in Nashville and all, and I wasn't there as much as I guess I would have liked to, but I remember only being there once or twice, honestly. And the thing that messed me up with TNA is that I actually had a shoot job. I was working in the school system then, and to get a day off, they were shooting on like Tuesdays, and it was like during the week sometime, and something that had worked out to where it was like you had to book your own room, you had to bring yourself up there, and it was like no guaranteed pay, and I really couldn't afford to, go back and forth there, taking days off work, man. It really just, I feel like if I had to do it all over again, I would have made a way to do it, but I don't know, I didn't push hard enough to continue to keep coming back to invest in that time, you know what I mean? And the times I had there was cool, but like I said, it was just like once or twice that I ended up going there, and it was like, oh man, come back. But I was like, every time I came, it was kind of like I've been living on my own since I was 18 years old, so it was like I didn't live with my parents or live with somebody that I could be like, hey man, I can't pay rent. You know what I mean? If I couldn't pay rent, I would have to move, And so a lot of things that other people were able to do, I just were not able to do because I've always I've been on my own since I was 18 years old, and everything I've done, I've had to do responsibly, And wrestling is a sport and a business that the greats make it, not because they're necessarily great, but because they're able to hang everything up and go for it, And I think that's been like the main thorn in my side is that I've always had responsibilities that would keep me from just hanging everything up and just going for it, And I believe now I have a chance to do that, but I still have my responsibilities as well.
that's a double-edged sword, and it's a tough road to hoe. And I think most anybody that has tried to grind it out on the independent circuit to any level of success knows that. It really is. You've got the on one edge of the sword. It is, well, I can just drop everything and I can go and live my dream, but then, life catches up to you, and we all got bills to pay. So, you're not in the wrong for doing that. It's just hard for some people, and I definitely understand that. I've been there. I've held down a full-time job for like 11 years trying to do wrestling on the side, and it's not been easy, but, it is what it is. I've managed to do some decent things in wrestling, probably not, like you say, as much as you'd want to, because you can't just dive all the way into it. But in the same respect, you are lucky you have that security, because wrestling isn't going to be there forever, ever, but you still want to jump on the opportunities while they're there. So it's a tough spot to be in, for sure.
It's all, I don't regret a thing, and things are still happening, man. So I really believe I've been preserved, man. So we'll just see what comes in the future.
Well, the future's looking pretty bright for you as of right now. You came back to NWA Anarchy, and you did a lot of indies off and on during various periods of wrestling, but you ended up back in Ring of Honor in 2011, and you're still there as of today, and they're growing. They're now part of the Sinclair Broadcast Network, and you can catch them weekly. Just check your local listings for the various time slots that Ring of Honor will be available, but Caprice is appearing there. What was it like finally getting in the door full-time up there?
A dream come true. Ring of Honor is like one company that I can always say they never lied to me. They never blew smoke up. They never got my hopes up about something that they didn't mean to. What they told me when I got back in the country and I started doing a little bit with them here and there, they said, hey, we're getting ready to be bought out, and we don't know what's going to happen. They said they hope what happens is they're able to bring in more talent. If they're able to bring in more talent, my name's at the top of the list. That's when they said, hey, we know you're a little older. Can you still go? I was like, yeah. And they said, are you ready for the road? Can you go on the road and, on the rigorous, time schedules and whatever like that? And I said, yeah, just give me a chance to do it, and they did, and I believe I've done well with it, and this is my 4th year with them, and I'm looking for many more, to see what else I have to offer. I've been working with talent development in the back a little bit, and working in commentary, working with the seminars, helping the young guys, and I'm doing some mentoring. And just able to be me, man, and they allow me to be me on camera. And it's just been one blessing after another. Other doors continue to open up with that, and Ring of Honor is growing. Even as we speak, man, at the shows that we're going to, the crowds are getting bigger, the names are getting bigger that are coming to Ring of Honor. And it's becoming a very good, solid product. Even more than it already was, because now it's a legit threat. Because it has a syndicated program on that's nationally known, and it's really catching a lot of attention.
You also got to think TNA were pretty far ahead with viewership when they were on Spike TV, but now they're part of this growing network, and I wish them all the best, but also, that's a bigger piece of the pie that's out there for Ring of Honor to grab. And like you mentioned, there's bigger stars coming in. I was talking to AJ about this a couple of months ago when he was on the show, and there's been even more stars that have come in since then. But the roster is really deepening.
Absolutely, man. We got Alberto Del Rio, Alberto Patron, we got Samoa Joe, and Christopher Daniels is back, and Kazarian, and AJ Styles, and it's just the list goes on, man. Jay Lethal is a very good group of people, man. And then the stars that are coming up, Cedric Alexander, ACH, Adam Cole, Mike Bennett, Matt Taven, the Briscoe brothers. The Briscoe brothers just is Ring of Honor. But yeah, it's just a fantastic group, man. And the good thing about Ring of Honor is they have that dojo to where they're always bringing in and honing new people. Just like WWE has the NXT or their training facility, Ring of Honor has their dojo where there's people there that, hasn't even came to Ring of Honor yet, that once they break out, you ain't seen nothing yet. That's all I'm going to say.
That's a good way to have a feeder system in place because you can groom some of your own stars and you don't have to worry about going for outside talent when you can bring them up from within. And sometimes you'll catch just the right talent at the right time. WWE's done it a few times. Other groups with developmental system in play have done that as well. And I don't doubt that Ring of Honor is going to do it if they haven't already. I know probably that there's a few guys from the dojo that are on the main roster now, aren't there?
A lot of them, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's, I can't list them all because a lot of them came through that era, but there's Jay Diesel, there's Red Titus, Will Ferrar. I don't like listing names because I always leave somebody out. But there's a lot of guys like from the dojo itself, and all of the people that get hired for Ring of Honor, if they're not already a name, they come through the dojo. You know what I mean? They either try out or train at the dojo. So anybody that you see at Ring of Honor that that you haven't seen on WWE or TNA or whatever like that, trust and believe they made it to Ring of Honor through a tryout camp. They came to a tryout camp to get a job.
Instilling that respect and paying dues, nothing wrong with that. We're coming down into just the last few minutes here of the interview. I just wanted to give you an opportunity before we start to wrap up here, just a chance to plug anything you want to plug, upcoming appearances, Twitter, websites, etc.
Well, Twitter at Caprice Coleman and Instagram at Caprice Coleman. I'm excited about the month coming up, and I have a lot of dates and all. We got this weekend I'm doing a seminar in Pennsylvania with Ring of Honor, and next weekend we'll be in California. The next weekend we'll be in San Antonio, Texas. The next weekend I'll actually be in Qatar, and then it just continues to grow, man. I'm still preaching. I'll come back in April, and I'll be preaching at my home church. And then I'm leaving from there and going to Winston-Salem, wrestling for America's Most Liked that same afternoon. So it just keeps going, man. And it's like a dream come true, man. I just pray that I'm able to continue to do it as long as he allows me to do it, man. And that I'm able to share a light that maybe people wouldn't see anywhere else, because everybody's not going to go to church, but if I can be a light somewhere else, man, I believe I can be that light outside of church that people be like, there's something different about that guy. And I believe we all know what it is.
You no doubt have a passion for life and everything that you do, and it definitely shines through, and I think that's why you've made so many fans over the years and will continue to do so. Of course, we got a lot of long-time Wildside fans that listen to the show, so that, people that have seen you and followed you for many, many years. I think probably no better way to close it out than just ask you if you have any final words or thoughts for the supporters that have been along this long journey with Caprice Coleman.
Don't stop supporting me, man. Don't give up on me now. I love each and every one of you. You've created a monster. And somebody that I've been blessed, man, to get another chance in life. 20 years, man, in the making, and now I have an opportunity to show the world what I've been able to hone and what I've been able to do, and what everybody down at Wildside has created, and helped me to become. And I owe so much to y'all. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all, and you'll see me again because the wrestling world just goes around in circles. So I'm not opposed to coming down and making an appearance every once in a while. That's the place I can always call home. So until then, y'all keep those doors open to the place off 85 that's still alive.
Outstanding, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to join the show this week. I hope maybe one more time I'll get to do that classic ring introduction for you at some point.
All right, appreciate it, man. Y'all fix those doors yet?
Hey, I don't know. They've got a new owner now. You have to ask him.
They need to fix those, fix the potholes. I don't know. It probably won't be the same without the potholes in the doors. If the door's closed, something wrong with it. I don't know.
I don't know. They've done some remodeling, so I hear it's nicer. I'm looking forward to visiting again.
If we actually get stairs that goes up to the door, that would be phenomenal.
Well, we had them once, and then somebody crashed through them, man. They never rebuilt them. Oh, man.
I love y'all, man. You take it easy, bro.
Hey, take care of yourself, my brother.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, see ya. Caprice Coleman, ladies and gentlemen, this week on the show. What a great interview and very insightful into a great talent in the business. That's all I got for you this week, folks, but I appreciate you joining me. We'll be right back next week with part 2 of Bobby Hayes on the Midnight Black Mass. Keep one foot in the gutter and one fist in the gold. This is The Rev. I'm out.
Thank you.